Good afternoon and welcome to Watercolor Hour. I'm going to be walking you through painting a cactus, so go ahead and grab your kit and we'll get started. I'm going to go over everything you should have in your kit. You're going to have a copy of the reference photo, which I don't have handy, but this is what it looks like. And you'll have an outline, you'll have a half sheet of watercolor paper, and you'll have 5 paint colors. You should also have a round brush and a detail brush, same as we always use. You're going to need to grab some water for rinsing your brush, a paper towel, and something to trace the photo. If you have a palette handy, you can use that. So I'm going to start by checking out our colors. So you've got a really bright lemon yellow. We have permanent orange. We have this quinacridone rose. So those 3 are going to be used for your flowers. And we have sap green and ultramarine. So those are the colors that we're going to be using. So I'm going to start by doing the sky. So that's just a watered down ultramarine. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you've got something like painter's tape at home, I went ahead and painted around the outline. You don't have to make an outline on your on your paper. I just wanted it to have one this time. So I'm making a watered down ultramarine, and we're just going to do the sky first. For me, it's a little bit easier to do the background and then work on this because the background is going to be really light, so it doesn't matter too much if it bleeds a little bit into this area here. If you do the sky last, it's a little bit more difficult because you're having to work around all these flowers. And this is going to be a really light blue. So you can see that's very, very faint. You want to make sure to make enough of it to cover the back area though, so I'm going to keep adding water in here, and if I have leftover it's not a big deal, but if I don't have enough, then it's a problem. Alright, so I've got this watered down blue, and I'm just going to start filling in the back. So I'm just going to wait for this to dry, and then we will start on the cactus. So now we're going to start working on the big cactus pads, and for that we're going to mix a dark green using our sap and the ultramarine. So this is sap green, and I'm adding some of the ultra. Adding water just so that I have more paint, but I don't want it to be light, so I'm not adding too much water. Okay, so I like that green. Could be a little bit darker though. think that's good. So we've got a nice dark green. If we want to make it lighter, we would just water it down. So I'm gonna start by, I just didn't rinse off my brush, so there's a little bit of water on there, but I'm not actually grabbing any paint yet. So I want this side to be darker. So I'm going to add some of the dark paint that I mixed over on this side. I'm just smoothing out my line because there was an area where it was kind of sticking out. So I dried off my brush and now I'm just grabbing some of this water and then dabbing my brush just because I have a lot of paint there. So we can't work on this one yet because this is wet, so I'm going to jump over here and work on that one. And for that I'm not going to get it wet first. I'm just going to grab my dark paint and start in this corner down here. And then I've rinsed my brush off and I'm just getting this side wet. And then I'm going to bring this over just so that it meets this darker color. A little bit more of the dark green in here. Alright, so I need to wait for these to dry and then we're going to work on these two. If you want to speed it up, if you've got a hair dryer or something, you can use that to speed up the process. Okay, so now we're going to fill these two spots in. Now we're using the same dark green mix, but I'm adding some just on the bottom. And then rinsing off my brush. And for this one, I'm just going to run it along here. So you just want to make sure that this, where this the two pads here are touching, that this one is lighter. If they're the same color, it won't look like two different pads. And we're doing the same thing over here. So we want this side to be lighter than the one that it's touching. So I just have some water. this could be a little bit darker down here. And rinsing off my brush and just blending this a little bit. So now we're going to switch over to using our detail brush, and we're going to work on these little pods up here. And we're going to be using the same dark green. So if you don't have any left, mix up some more of the green and blue. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to mine. Okay, so with these, we're going to be painting them first and then doing the flowers. So I'm going to start with this one down here, and I'm just going to fill the whole thing in with the dark green. And we do want this to be darker than the cactus pad so that it shows up better. So if your paint isn't dark enough, definitely mix up some that's a bit darker. And I do want that a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is mix some with no water. So that it's even darker. It's hard to tell because I know that's far away from the camera, but that's a pretty decent amount darker than it was. So I'm going to grab my dark mix, and on this one I'm just filling in this side here, and it's going to get lighter over here. Filling in about half of it, and then I'm rinsing off my brush and filling in the rest of the space with just water. And just make sure you blend it so you don't have a line going right down the middle. And then with this one, adding the dark paint down here at the bottom. And along the side. And then rinsing off my brush and just filling this in. So you can, I don't know if you can tell, but there was some blue that bled over from the sky here, but it's all getting covered up. So just using my dark shade here. And then rinsing off my brush. So I'm doing this just so that this is not all the same color. It looks really flat if it's all the same shade of green. There's also, when I looked at the reference photo, light coming from this way, so the backs of these pads would be in shadow. And this one, and the reference photo has shadows on both sides. I've got too much water here, so I'm just drying my brush off and sucking some of this paint up. And this one's pretty dark all over. Now this next one is touching, so I'm going to skip that one for now and move on to these over here. So I'm just filling in this side, same as I did with the other ones. And then rinsing off my brush. And just filling the rest in with water. And this one, I'm filling in the bottom half. And then rinsing off my brush. Last one over here. I've got my dark paint. And I filled in most of it. And I've got my brush rinsed off. Alright, so now I'm going to come over here, hopefully. This is dry. I guess I'll see. So I'm going to use my dark color on this side. Mix a little more. Got my brush rinsed off and I'm filling in the space. It does look a little bit wet, so if you're doing this at home you should probably wait, but I'm impatient, so I'm just going ahead. Especially if you've got a ton of water on here and this is still wet, those will end up mixing. Alright. So now I just need to wait for those to dry and then we are going to work on the flowers. So we are almost done. We're going to work on the flowers and then we're going to paint our spines. So for the flowers you have yellow, orange, and this rose color. The cactus flowers are actually yellow, but as they dry they look different shades. So these look kind of orange and pink to me. Now you can do them all the same color, you can do them different colors, it's up to you. I'm going to start with my rose and I'm just going to water some down. And that's what I'm going to use for this one over here. I've dried off my brush after just painting a little bit. And now I'll just dab my brush here and spread it out. I'm grabbing some of the rose on my brush, so not watered down at all. And let's see. little bit too much paint, so I'm gonna put the dark paint over here. And then rinse off my brush. So I just didn't want it to look all the same sort of pink color. And when I put it down, that's what it looked like. So just like we did with these, we just want one area to be a little bit darker. For this next one, I'm going to water down some orange. This is a really bright orange. And you can see on the outline that we traced, there's a little line coming across here. So we want the top to be lighter, so I'm just going to fill the orange in, or fill this space in with the orange, and leave that top part alone for now. Just rinsed off my brush. And I think this one over here, I'm gonna have this section be orange as well. And this line is a little flat, so I'm gonna just extend the orange up. And this one, I'm using the orange just to make some lines here. And I think this one I'm going to do in pink. I'm going to make it a little bit wider. I'm not sure why. When I trace this, it didn't turn out as wide. Now I like this orange shade mixed with the rose, so I'm going to make some of that. So you end up with this color. And I'm going to use that over here. And just rinsing off my brush. I need the top to be lighter because we're going to come back and paint this section later, so we don't want it to be the same color. So just water. And I'll use that same shade on this one. And I just rinsed off my brush. Let's see, this one, I'm I'm gonna mix up my colors. So I'm gonna start with some orange. And this is just leftover watered down orange. A mix of orange and rose. I'm going to drop that in down here. So those two should kind of blend together. It just makes it look a little bit more interesting. For this next one, I'm just seeing what the rose looks like mixed with the yellow instead of the orange. And I like that too, just a little bit different. So I'll use that over here on this one. So again, rinsing off my brush and just filling this space in. Alright, so this one looks pretty dry. So now you can grab any color that's darker than this to fill in the rest of the flower. So I don't even know, I think this is a mix of the orange and rose. But it's darker. So you're just going to fill in the top space with a darker shade. And for this one, I forgot to come back and add some yellow, so I'm going to do that now. And I'm painting over the whole thing. You can still see the orange on the bottom. And some more yellow. And I'm just filling out that space there. Not dark enough for me, so I'm gonna add some orange. And then just blend these together. Add some yellow over here. I've got some of the dark rose. And that'll go up here. It's a little too dark. space. So I'm just going to water some orange down and add that over here. So if you like how your flowers look, you're done with those. I'm just adding some color here because it wasn't blended too well. And I'm gonna run my brush over this. Sometimes I'll paint and the lines will be a little too harsh. So I'll just take my wet brush and run it over everything. Now we're going to work on the spines. For that, we're going to use the same green and blue mix, but it's going to be really dark. So you need very, very little water. So you want a really, really dark green. And you're just going to start making dots with your detail brush. And don't forget to put some along the edges too, not just on the cactus pad. These guys as well. So if you like how it looks, you can stop at this point. Otherwise, what you're going to do is grab your, this is just white acrylic paint, and you're going to use your detail brush to make your spines. So you just want to be sure that these are dry, and then we'll use the white paint. So now we've got our white acrylic paint, and we're going to be using our detail brush to paint the spines. So these are pretty dark. They're going to be covered up by some of the spines. So what you're going to do is just put your brush down, and it's easier if you hold it at a 90-degree angle. Make your dot and then drag it out for your spine. And you don't have to cover every single one with spines either. Just make sure you do them in different directions. use my white to just make a few dots as well. If you have a pen at home, like a gel pen, or I like Post-it markers, it's definitely easier to use those. Unfortunately, I couldn't put those in all your kits this month because they are a bit pricey, but if you do watercolors a lot and you like to add white details later on, Post-it markers are great. Right, so I'm happy with how that looks. So now I'm just going to remove the tape and hope that I pressed it down firmly enough that you can see a clean line. And that is our painting, so I hope you enjoyed it today. Next month we will be back to in person and we will be painting an iris, so I look forward to seeing you all in May. Take care.